My sister showed up to my housewarming with suitcases. Mom whispered, "Don't make a scene." The message I sent later left them both speechless. My name is Victoria. I'm 34 years old, and I've been working as a product manager at a major tech company in Austin for several years now. The job pays really well, and 2 months ago, I finally achieved one of my biggest dreams. I bought my own house. It's a beautiful 4-bedroom ranch-style home in the Terrytown neighborhood with a huge backyard and a view of the hill country on clear days. I fell in love with it the moment I walked through the front door. The oak floors gleamed in the afternoon sun. The built-in bookshelves in the living room were perfect, and the kitchen had this gorgeous quartz island I'd always wanted. For the past 2 months, I've been having the time of my life picking out furniture from crate and barrel and restoration hardware, designing each room exactly how I wanted it. I spent weekends at Lowe's choosing paint colors and evenings scrolling through Pinterest for inspiration. Every lamp, every throw pillow, every piece of art on the walls, it was all mine, chosen by me, paid for by me. I have parents who are in their early 60s and a younger sister named Melissa who's 31. Our family dynamic has always been complicated. My parents have consistently favored Melissa since we were kids. They fully paid for her tuition at the University of Texas, rented her a studio apartment near campus while she was studying, and threw her an expensive wedding at the Driscoll Hotel a few years ago. Meanwhile, I started working when I was 16, serving coffee at a local cafe near our house in Round Rock, and saved every penny I earned to pay for my own education. I was good with computers, so I built up a little side business fixing laptops and helping people set up their home networks. Even back then, I knew I'd have to pay for my own college because my parents wouldn't help with that kind of expense. That was just the reality of being the less favored daughter. That's why when college time came, I was shocked when my parents gave me $30,000 toward tuition. It covered part of the costs at Texas State University, and my scholarship covered the rest. After graduating, I moved back home to Round Rock briefly, then got my current job and rented an apartment in South Congress. I lived there for years, eating ramen and skipping vacations, saving up every month for this house. Even now, my parents still give Melissa money to help with her rent in Hyde Park because she and her husband Brandon apparently can't manage on their own. But I try not to think about all that family drama. I was too excited about showing off my new place. Last week, I invited my family over to see the house for the first time. My parents knew I'd bought it, but they'd never actually been inside. When they arrived after work on a Tuesday evening, I was so proud to give them the tour. My parents, Melissa, and her husband Brandon walked through the front door, and I immediately noticed their expressions change. They looked around the living room, taking in my mid-century modern furniture, the refinished oak floors, the large windows overlooking the garden. Melissa wandered off to explore the bedrooms while the rest of us stayed downstairs. I was pointing out the original crown molding when she came back, and she had this weird look on her face. "You don't need all these rooms," she said bluntly. "You live alone." "Well, I won't always live alone," I replied, trying to keep my voice cheerful. "Someday I'll get married, maybe have kids. And I've always dreamed of having a big, spacious house." I could see the envy written all over her face. It was obvious she wasn't happy about my success. Mom walked over and patted Melissa on the shoulder. "Don't worry, sweetie. Everything will work out fine." What was that supposed to mean? They left soon after, and I figured that was the end of it. I'd shown them my house. They'd seen how well I was doing, and now we could all move on. I had no idea what was coming. 2 weeks later, I decided to throw a proper housewarming party. I sent invitations through paperless posts to all my friends, colleagues from the tech company, and relatives, including my parents and Melissa. I spent days preparing, ordering a catering spread from Central Market, stocking up on local craft beers and Texas wines, making sure the house looked perfect. The day of the party arrived, and guests started showing up around 6 o'clock. My coworkers came straight from the office. Old friends from Texas State showed up with bottles of wine. Neighbors from down the street dropped by. It was turning into a really fun evening. The house was filled with laughter and conversation, and people kept complimenting the renovations I'd done. But my parents and Melissa were nowhere to be seen. Around 7, I got a text from Mom. "Dad and I aren't feeling well. I have high blood pressure acting up. Sorry, we can't make it." I was disappointed but not surprised. My parents had never been great at celebrating my achievements. The party was going really well when around 8 o'clock, my front door opened and Melissa walked in with Brandon. But here's the weird part: they were carrying suitcases. 2 large rolling suitcases and matching carry-on bags. Hey guys, I said, confused. What's with the luggage? Melissa smiled at me like nothing was unusual. Mom said we could live with you. We're moving in. Where's the best bedroom? We'll need you to prepare it for us. I stared at her, speechless. The conversation around us had started to quiet down as people noticed something strange was happening. What are you talking about? I finally managed to say. But Brandon was already heading upstairs with their suitcases. I followed him, my heart pounding, watching in horror as he walked straight into my master bedroom and started setting their bags down on my bed. What do you think you're doing? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Getting settled in, Melissa said, appearing behind me in the doorway. She pushed past me and started opening suitcases, pulling out clothes and toiletries. You'll need to move your stuff out of here. This will be our room now. You can take one of the smaller bedrooms. I was in complete shock. My guests downstairs were probably wondering where I'd disappeared to, but I couldn't process what was happening. My sister was literally trying to take over my bedroom at my own housewarming party. Melissa, you can't just move into my house without asking me first. Mom already cleared it with you, she said, not even looking at me as she hung a dress in my closet. No, she absolutely did not. I went back downstairs, trying to keep my composure in front of my guests. People kept asking if everything was okay, noticing my flushed face and shaking hands, but I just smiled and said it was fine, just some family logistics to work out. I stepped out onto the back porch and called my mother. The phone rang and rang, but she didn't pick up. 5 minutes later, I got a text message from her. Just don't make a scene. Melissa deserves this house as much as you do. She'll live with you until they save up money for their own place. This is what family does for each other. I read the message 3 times, unable to believe what I was seeing. My mother thought my sister deserved my house. The house I'd worked for years to afford. The house I'd saved every penny for while Melissa got everything handed to her on a silver platter. I was furious, but I had a house full of guests. I couldn't blow up right now. I went back inside, plastered a smile on my face, and continued hosting my party. Melissa and Brandon had come back downstairs and were acting like nothing unusual had happened. They were chatting with my friends and colleagues, holding glasses of my wine, eating my catered food, telling everyone how excited they were to be helping me out by moving in. The worst part was when people started complimenting the house and Melissa began taking credit for my decorating choices. Oh yes, I told Victoria to buy those curtains, she said to my coworker Jennifer. And I picked out this sofa, she told my neighbor Michael, pointing to the gray sectional I'd spent weeks choosing. I have such a better eye for design than my sister. I just stood there, nodding and smiling, while my sister claimed credit for all the work I'd put into making this place my dream home. But inside, I was already planning my next move. There was no way I was letting my sister and her husband move into my house. I'd worked too hard for this to let my family take it away from me. The party wrapped up around 11, and after the last guest left, I went upstairs to find Melissa and Brandon completely settled into my bedroom. Their clothes were in my closet, their toiletries were spread across my bathroom counter, and they were lying on my bed watching Netflix on the TV I'd mounted on the wall. We need to talk about this, I said from the doorway. There's nothing to talk about, Melissa said without looking away from the screen. Mom arranged everything. You have all these extra rooms, and we need a place to stay while we save money. It's not a big deal. It's a huge deal. This is my house. And we're family, Brandon said, finally glancing at me. Family helps family, right? That night, I barely slept. I ended up in the smallest guest bedroom, lying on the bare mattress, because Melissa had taken my sheets to use in her room. I kept thinking about how my family had always treated me like a second-class citizen, and now they were literally trying to take my home away from me. But I had a plan, and tomorrow I was going to put it into action. The next morning, I woke up early and found Melissa and Brandon in my kitchen, drinking my expensive coffee and eating my groceries like they own the place. We need keys to the house, Melissa said without even saying good morning. We're both leaving for work soon, and we'll be back before you get home. We're not going to stand around waiting on your doorstep. I'll come home early to let you in, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I need to get extra keys made first. Melissa rolled her eyes, but didn't push it further. They finished their coffee and left for work in their Toyota Camry. As soon as their car pulled out of the driveway, I called my boss. Hey, I have a family emergency I need to deal with today. Can I take a personal day? Of course, Victoria. Hope everything's okay. Everything was definitely not okay, but it was about to be. I immediately went upstairs to my master bedroom and started packing all of Melissa and Brandon's belongings back into their suitcases. Every piece of clothing, every toiletry, every personal item they'd unpacked the night before went right back where it came from. It took me 2 hours to get everything packed. Then I called a local delivery service I'd found online. "I need you to pick up some suitcases and deliver them to an address in Round Rock," I said. When the delivery driver arrived in his white van, I helped him load up all of Melissa's stuff, 4 large pieces of luggage in total. Before he left, I taped a note to the largest suitcase. The note read, "Just don't make a scene. I'm not going to let parasites live in my house. Let them stay with you. Victoria." I figured my parents would get the message loud and clear. About an hour later, my phone started ringing nonstop. My parents were calling over and over, but I didn't answer. Then the text messages started flooding in, one after another, making my phone buzz constantly. "Mom, how could you be so cruel and selfish? Dad, you've kicked your sister out with nowhere to go. Mom, this is unacceptable behavior from a daughter. I raised you better than this." I ignored all of them, silencing my phone and setting it face down on the kitchen counter. Then Melissa started calling. When I didn't answer her calls either, she switched to texting, and these messages were even more aggressive. "Melissa, what the hell is wrong with you? Where are things? Melissa, we broke our lease agreement in Hyde Park because Mom said we could live with you. Now we have nowhere to go. Melissa, you're destroying our lives over nothing. Nothing." To that last message, I finally responded, "You can stay with Mom and Dad until you find a new apartment. I'm sure they'll be happy to help." After sending that text, I blocked all their phone numbers. Every single one. I was done with the drama and manipulation. For 2 weeks, my life was blissfully quiet. No unexpected house guests, no entitled family members taking over my space, no one claiming credit for my hard work. I could actually enjoy the house I'd worked so hard to buy. I spent evenings reading in my sunroom, cooked elaborate meals in my kitchen, and hosted a few close friends for dinner without any family drama. Then I got an email that made my blood run cold. The subject line read, "Legal notice, urgent response required." It was from a lawyer I'd never heard of, someone named Harold Mitchell from a firm in downtown Round Rock. The email said my parents were planning to sue me. They wanted me to either let Melissa move back into my house, or they would take me to court and demand I pay them back the $30,000 they'd spent on my college education at Texas State University. I stared at the email in disbelief, reading it over and over again. Were my parents seriously threatening to sue their own daughter for not letting my sister freeload in my house? The email went on to detail their damages. Apparently, Melissa had lost her apartment lease and had to pay early termination fees. My parents claimed this was my fault for making false promises about housing their daughter. They were demanding compensation for Melissa's pain and suffering. I didn't know if they actually had any legal grounds to demand that money back. The whole thing seemed insane, but the letterhead looked official, and the lawyer's name checked out when I searched for him online. So I decided to call my Aunt Ruth. She's my dad's sister and has always been aware of the family's financial situations. She lived in San Antonio but stayed connected to the family gossip. "Aunt Ruth, I need to ask you something about the money my parents gave me for college," I said when she answered. "What about it, honey? Do you know where that money actually came from?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You don't know." "Know what?" "Victoria, that money came from your grandmother's inheritance, not your parents." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What do you mean?" "When your grandmother died the year before you graduated high school, she left her savings to your parents, but she specifically asked them to use half for your education and half for Melissa's education. She wrote it right in her will." "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. Your parents didn't spend their own money on your college. They spent your grandmother's inheritance money that was designated for you anyway. They just never told you that's where it came from." My hands were shaking. "Do you have any proof of this?" "Actually, yes. Your father sent me a copy of your grandmother's will years ago. I keep important family documents in a file. I can email it to you right now if you want." "Please do." 20 minutes later, I had a copy of my grandmother's will in my inbox. I opened the PDF with trembling fingers and read through it carefully. There it was, in black and white. My grandmother, Dorothy Henderson, had left her life savings to be divided between her son, my father, and her daughter, Aunt Ruth, with a specific stipulation that my father's portion be divided equally between her granddaughters, Victoria and Melissa, for their educational expenses. The will even specified that if the money wasn't used for education, it should go directly to the granddaughters instead. My parents had taken my inheritance and made it look like they were doing me a favor. They'd let me think I owed them something when that money was mine all along. I immediately made an appointment with a lawyer to discuss my parents' threats. I found someone through a colleague's recommendation, a family law attorney named Catherine Moore, who had an office in downtown Austin, not far from my work. The lawyer reviewed all the documents, including the threatening email and my grandmother's will. When I explained the whole situation, the attempted move-in, the lawsuit threat, everything, she actually laughed. "Your parents have absolutely no grounds to sue you," she said, leaning back in her leather office chair. "First of all, the money they gave you is actually your inheritance anyway, so they can't claim it was a gift they're entitled to take back. Second, even if it wasn't inheritance money, educational gifts from parents to children aren't loans that can be recalled. And third, they certainly can't force you to house your sister. That's completely absurd. So I don't have to worry about this?" I asked, relief flooding through me. "Not at all. Let me draft a response letter explaining why their demands have no legal merit. I'll send it directly to this Harold Mitchell and make it very clear that any further harassment will result in a countersuit." A few days later, Catherine sent an official response to my parents' attorney. The letter was beautifully written, laying out exactly why they had no case and warning them that continued threats would be considered harassment. I didn't hear anything more about lawsuits after that. The threatening emails stopped, and Harold Mitchell never contacted me again. But my family wasn't done causing problems for me. 2 months later, Aunt Ruth called with disturbing news. I was at work in the middle of a product development meeting when my phone buzzed with her name. I normally wouldn't take a call during a meeting, but something told me this was important. "Victoria, I need to tell you something," Aunt Ruth said as soon as I stepped into the hallway. "Your parents have been saying terrible things about you." "What now?" I asked, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. "They're telling everyone in the family that you promised Melissa she could live in your house, but then you kicked them out because you were romantically obsessed with Brandon and he rejected you." I nearly dropped the phone. "They're saying what?" "They're claiming you had some kind of inappropriate obsession with your brother-in-law, and when he turned you down, you threw them out in revenge. They're making you sound completely unhinged." I was speechless. My own parents were spreading lies about me that could destroy my reputation, both personally and professionally. If those rumors made it to my workplace, they could damage my careers. "Aunt Ruth, you know that's not true, right?" I said, my voice cracking. "Of course I know it's not true. I've known you since you were born. But they're telling the story to anyone who will listen." "I thought you needed to know." I thanked her and hung up, then stood in the hallway trying to compose myself before going back into the meeting. I couldn't focus for the rest of the day. All I could think about was how my parents were trying to destroy my reputation because I wouldn't let them take advantage of me. It was one thing for my family to be entitled and manipulative, but spreading false rumors about me was crossing a line I couldn't ignore. That evening, I sent my mother a message through Facebook where other family members could see it. I made it a public post, tagged her directly, and wrote, "You need to publicly retract the lies you've been spreading about me and Brandon. If you don't, I'll sue you for defamation." I've already consulted with a lawyer, and she says what you're doing is illegal and could get you in serious legal trouble. You have 48 hours to set the record straight, or you'll be hearing from my attorney. I meant every word of it. Catherine had already told me that if they continued spreading false information, we could pursue a defamation case. My threat must have gotten through to my mother because a few days later, Aunt Ruth called me with an update. "Your mother called a family dinner at her house. She gathered everyone together, me, your cousins, a few aunts and uncles, and admitted she made up those stories about you and Brandon." "What exactly did she say?" "She said she'd overreacted and invented the whole thing to get revenge on you for kicking Melissa out. She tried to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal, but everyone was horrified." "What did everyone else say?" "They were shocked, Victoria. Nobody could believe she would spread such awful lies about her own daughter. Most of the family has stopped talking to your parents entirely. They're pretty much pariahs at family gatherings now." It was satisfying to know that my parents' lies had backfired on them, but I was also sad that it had come to this. I'd never wanted to be estranged from my family. I just wanted them to respect my boundaries and stop treating me like a doormat. But here we were. The next few months were the most peaceful I'd had in years. No family drama, no entitled relatives trying to move into my house, no lies being spread about me. I could finally focus on my job and enjoy the home I'd worked so hard for. My work performance improved dramatically without all the family stress weighing me down. I was able to concentrate fully on my projects, and my manager noticed. 6 months after everything exploded with my family, I got promoted to senior product manager with a significant raise. I used some of the extra money to landscape my backyard, hiring a company to put in raised garden beds, install a fire pit area, and even get a hot tub. The backyard became my sanctuary, a place where I could relax and forget about all the family drama. I also started dating someone new. His name was Ethan, and he was a software engineer at Dell. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue in Mueller, and we hit it off immediately. He was funny, kind, and refreshingly drama-free. When I told him about the situation with my family, sitting in a coffee shop in Clarksville on our fourth date, he was amazed. "Your sister just showed up and tried to move into your house without asking? With suitcases and everything?" "Yep. And my parents supported it." "That's insane. I can't imagine my family doing something like that." It opened my eyes to how dysfunctional my family really was. Talking to Ethan about it, seeing his genuine shock and confusion, made me realize that what my family had done wasn't just wrong, it was completely abnormal. Ethan and I had been dating for about 6 months when I decided to host another party, this time for my 35th birthday. I invited friends, coworkers, and a few relatives who had stayed supportive throughout the drama with my parents. Aunt Ruth came, along with a couple of cousins who had reached out after hearing what really happened. We had a great time. Catered barbecue from a local restaurant, cocktails mixed by Ethan, who fancied himself an amateur bartender, and music playing in the backyard as the sun set behind the hills. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like I had a chosen family of people who actually respected and valued me. During the party, my cousin Nina pulled me aside near the fire pit. "Victoria, I need to tell you something about Melissa and Brandon." "What about them?" "They're struggling financially. They had to rent this really cheap apartment in Pflugerville after you kicked them out, and they're apparently cutting every corner they can. Living on ramen and frozen pizza, not going out, the whole thing." "That's not my problem," I said, taking a sip of my margarita. "I know, and I'm not saying it is. I just thought you should know that your parents aren't helping them anymore either." "Really?" "Yeah. Your mom told my mom that they're done bailing Melissa out. They said she needs to learn to stand on her own 2 feet. It was ironic that my parents had finally learned to set boundaries with Melissa, but only after I'd been forced to set boundaries with all of them. A few weeks later, I ran into Brandon at the Whole Foods in downtown Austin. It was awkward. We made eye contact across the produce section, and I could see him debating whether to pretend he didn't see me or come over. He chose to come over. "Victoria, I want you to know that moving into your house wasn't my idea," he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "Melissa insisted. And your mom backed her up." I thought it was wrong from the beginning, but I went along with it because he trailed off. "Because what?" "Because Melissa would have made my life hell if I disagreed with her. She was convinced you owed her that house since your parents had always favored her less growing up. She has this whole twisted logic about it." "That's not how life works, Brandon." "I know that now. We're actually doing okay on our own, by the way. It's been hard, but we're managing. And I'm sorry for what we put you through." I was surprised by the apology. It didn't change anything, but it was something. Around the 1-year anniversary of buying my house, I decided to throw another celebration, this time just for me and Ethan. A quiet evening acknowledging how far I'd come and the life I'd built for myself. Ethan helped me prepare a special dinner. We grilled steaks on the back deck, roasted vegetables from my garden, and opened a bottle of wine from a winery we'd visited in Fredericksburg. As we sat in the hot tub under the stars, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, I realized how much happier I was. "I'm proud of you," Ethan said, taking my hand. "Not just for the house, but for standing up for yourself." That took real strength. It didn't feel like strength at the time. It felt terrifying. The best things usually do. A few months later, Ethan and I got engaged. He proposed on a weekend trip to Big Bend National Park on a hiking trail at sunset, and it was perfect. We started planning a small wedding for the following spring, just close friends and the family members who had actually supported me through everything. No drama, no entitled relatives, just people who genuinely cared about us. My career continued to flourish. I was promoted again, this time to Director of Product Development, managing a team of 12 people. The skills I'd learned from setting boundaries with my family had actually made me a better leader at work. I was direct, fair, and I didn't let people take advantage of me or my team. About once a month, Aunt Ruth still gave me updates about my parents and Melissa. The news was usually predictable. My parents were still angry about being cut off from most of the family, still asking relatives to mediate on their behalf. Melissa and Brandon were still in their small apartment in Pflugerville, apparently making ends meet but struggling. Last month, I got an unexpected phone call from Brandon again. Victoria, I know this is weird, but I wanted to reach out about something. What's going on? Melissa and I are getting divorced. I was surprised, but not shocked. Their relationship had always seemed built more on convenience than genuine compatibility. I'm sorry to hear that. The thing is, during our separation talks, a lot came out about what happened with your house. Melissa admitted she'd been planning to stay there permanently, not just until we saved money. What do you mean? She never intended to move out. She thought if you let her stay for a few months, she could establish residency and make it really hard for you to kick her out legally. Your mom was in on the whole plan. I felt sick hearing this. My own family had been plotting to essentially steal my house from me through tenant rights laws. Brandon, why are you telling me this now? Because I feel terrible about going along with it. I should have stopped her, but I was too weak. You deserved better from your family, and I'm sorry I didn't stand up for what was right. After we hung up, I sat in my living room thinking about how differently things could have gone. If I hadn't taken that day off work to pack their stuff, if I hadn't stood my ground, they might have succeeded in taking over my home. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail that I almost threw away without reading. It was from my mother. The letter was 3 pages long, written in her careful handwriting on cream-colored stationery. It started with what sounded like an apology. She said she'd been wrong to support Melissa's plan, wrong to spread lies about me, wrong to threaten me with a lawsuit. But by the second page, it became clear this wasn't really an apology. She was asking me to forgive and forget, so we could be a family again. She mentioned that she and my father were getting older and wanted to have a relationship with me before it was too late. The third page was the kicker. She casually mentioned that they'd been struggling financially since they stopped getting help from relatives who were angry about the lies they'd spread. She suggested that maybe I could help them out occasionally since I was doing so well, just a few hundred here and there to help with bills. I read the letter twice, then put it in my paper shredder and watched the strips fall into the bin. Some people never change. That evening, Ethan found me in the backyard, relaxing in the hot tub and looking at the stars. Everything okay? You seem thoughtful tonight. My mother sent me a letter. Sort of an apology, sort of a guilt trip, sort of a request for money. Are you considering responding? Not for a second. I've learned that some relationships are too toxic to salvage, even family ones. Do you ever regret cutting them off? I thought about it seriously before answering. No. My life is so much better without their constant drama and manipulation. I'm happier, more successful, and surrounded by people who actually care about me. Like me? Especially like you. The next month, we had our engagement party at the house. About 50 people came, friends from work, neighbors, old college buddies, and several relatives who had distanced themselves from my parents after learning the truth. My cousin Nina made a toast that brought tears to my eyes. To Victoria, who taught us all that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who support your dreams, respect your boundaries, and celebrate your successes. You've built something beautiful here, and we're all proud to be part of your chosen family. Looking around at the faces of people who genuinely cared about me, I realized I'd gained far more than I'd lost. Yes, I'd had to cut ties with my parents and sister, but I'd also learned to value myself and surround myself with people who appreciated me for who I really was. The house remained my favorite place in the world. Every room reflected my personality and choices. The backyard was perfect for entertaining friends who actually wanted to be there. And most importantly, it was mine, earned through my own hard work and protected by my own strength. I'd learned that setting boundaries wasn't mean or selfish. It was necessary for self-respect and mental health. I'd also learned that some people would always see kindness as weakness and independence as selfishness. Those people didn't deserve space in my life. As I planned my wedding and looked toward the future with Ethan, I felt grateful for every difficult lesson I'd learned. My family's attempt to take advantage of me had ultimately made me stronger and more confident. I was building a life based on mutual respect, genuine love, and earned success. And nobody, family or otherwise, was ever going to take that away from me.